All right, let's just jump right into this. We talk about motivation all the time, right? We're told to find our passion, to dig deep, to just try a little harder. But what if that whole conversation is completely missing the point? What if the problem isn't you at all, but the actual shape of your work?
This quote, man, it just nails it, doesn't it? This is the core idea we're going to unpack today. That feeling you get, that drained, disengaged feeling, it's not some kind of personal failure. It's often a totally rational response to a job where your hard work just seems to, vanish into thin air.
So let's start by taking a sledgehammer to what we can call the motivation myth. This is the story we've all been told about burnout, and it's a story that sneakily turns a problem with the system's design into a problem with your character. I mean, think about it. When someone's struggling at work, blaming their lack of motivation is just easy. It's the cheapest explanation, it puts all the pressure on them to fix themselves, and it lets the organization completely off the hook from having to look at its own broken systems. It's convenient for sure, but it's also deeply wrong. This right here perfectly contrasts the two mindsets. The old way of thinking sees people as these wells of motivation that you just have to keep pumping and extracting from. But the new view, the one we're digging into, sees motivation as a response. It's something that happens naturally under the right conditions. It reframes burnout not as your personal flaw, but as a bright, flashing warning light that the system itself needs a fix. And this just brilliantly shows how damaging that old myth can be. It's basically asking you to single-handedly make up for a broken structure with your own personal passion. It's like being told to just find the passion to row harder when the boat is literally full of holes. The problem isn't your rowing, buddy, it's the boat. So here's a really crucial shift in thinking. When people start to pull back or seem disengaged, it's usually not because they've stopped caring. It's because they've started paying attention. They're sensing that their energy isn't going anywhere useful. It's just turning into noise. So they start conserving it. It's not laziness, it's actually a pretty smart self-protective move. Okay, so that brings us to a much more accurate diagnosis. If that feeling of disengagement is a signal, what is it a signal of? Well, it's not a lack of motivation. It's something much deeper, and the word for it is alienation. This is the absolute key distinction. Alienation is that gut-wrenching feeling when your work is totally disconnected from any meaningful result. You put in the hours, you tick the boxes, but nothing clear or tangible ever comes back. It feels like your contribution just doesn't land anywhere. And that is not a motivation problem. That is a system problem through and through. Right. So if we're just going to throw out that old playbook of pep talks and finding your passion, what do we replace it with? What are the actual real-world conditions that make work feel not just bearable, but vital? And I want to be super specific with that word choice. We're not talking about fleeting feelings like excitement or inspiration. Those are great, but they come and go. We're talking about a much deeper, more sustainable state of feeling alive, of feeling present and effective and genuinely connected to what you do. And here's the answer. The secret isn't adding more perks or trying to force fun into the office. It's about removing the stuff that causes that feeling of alienation. It's about creating an environment where you can invest your effort and know it's not going to waste. Aliveness is what's left over when you design all the frustrating, nonsensical parts of work away. So how do we actually do that? Well, luckily, there's a pretty clear framework for it. Research from all over the place points to 6 specific structural conditions that, when they're in place, allow people to feel truly alive in their work. These 6 conditions are the literal building blocks of non-alienating work. They're not about your personality or your passion level, they're about the architecture of the role you're in. Okay, first up is agency. And look, this doesn't mean you need total freedom to do whatever you want. It just means you have some room to move, some space to be proactive, to help shape your work, and to make your own intentional decisions, instead of just reacting to a never-ending stream of demands. Second, and oh man, this one is huge, is coherence. This is that deep, fundamental human need to see that what you do actually matters. When you can draw a straight line from the effort you put in to a real-world result, that's when work feels good. When that loop is broken, burnout is pretty much guaranteed. The other 4 are just as critical. Number 3 is skill alignment, meaning your job actually uses the things you're genuinely good at. Fourth is low translation waste. This is a big one. It's about spending your brain power on solving real problems, not fighting with clunky software or reformatting documents for the 10th time. Fifth is psychological safety, being able to ask a dumb question or raise a concern without fearing you'll be punished for it. And finally, continuity, which is the feeling that your work is building on itself over time, not just hitting the reset button every single day. Now, here's the kicker. Most jobs today are failing on 2, 3, or even 4 of these at the same time. So if we know the conditions that create this feeling of aliveness, the whole conversation shifts to an architectural one. How do we start designing jobs that actually have these conditions baked in from the start? Because the problem isn't the people, it's the shape of the roles we're asking them to fill. This slide shows the two completely different ways to think about designing work. On one hand, you've got what most systems do, design for output extraction. It's all about speed and cost, which leads to fragmented, invisible work. The alternative, design for human coordination. This focuses on making sure effort makes sense and contributions are visible. And guess what? That naturally leads to aliveness. And when you start designing for coordination, you begin to see the immense value in roles that don't always look productive in the old school sense. Roles like sense-making, the person who connects the dots for everyone. Stewardship, the person who preserves the team's memory so you're not always reinventing the wheel. These roles are absolutely essential for a healthy system. I absolutely love this quote. It's so true. So many of these vital, aliveness-supporting jobs are totally invisible when they're working well. Stewardship is the perfect example. You don't even notice it's there until that person leaves. And suddenly, nobody knows why things are the way they are, and the team starts making the same mistakes all over again. Okay, so this all leads us to the real end game here. We need to shift our entire perspective. The goal isn't to create a handful of dream jobs or to have some rare, magical experience at work once in a blue moon. The real goal is to make this feeling of aliveness, of doing work that isn't alienating, the new normal. It's about changing our systems so that doing coherent, meaningful work becomes so common that we stop thinking of it as some kind of special prize. It should be the default. Which, of course, brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. If this is a design problem and not a personal one, then who's responsible for the design? And this is the thought I really want to leave you with. We already know people are capable of doing incredible, meaningful things when they're put in the right environment. That's not up for debate. The real question is whether our organizations are willing to do the hard, necessary work of designing systems that create that environment. Systems built for people, not just for output. That's not a motivation problem. That's a design challenge.